Hi, I'm Judy from JudiKins. I'm turning up the heat because today we're going to be heat embossing. Thermographic or heat embossing was developed around the 1900s to simulate the very expensive engraved printing. But today it's more commonly used for business cards, wedding invitations, and fancy correspondence. It's a process that's used by printers, but it's something that you can do at home if you have the right tools. I'm going to show you how you can make this fancy card here using rubber stamps, ink, and the embossing powder. I've already stamped out part of the card here, so I'm going to finish it off by stamping the E. I'm going to ink up my stamp and press it right down at the base of my card here. And with my embossing powder, I just pour that over the stamped image and the powder sticks to the wet ink. You want to be sure that you put a lot of powder on the card to make sure that you get nice even coverage. I shook off the excess, and you can return the powder back to your jars and take your heat tool and melt the powder. You can tell that it's finished embossing when all the color is nice and shiny. The next project I'm going to do is an 8x8 scrapbook page. I've created this really cute little purse pocket, and as you can see, if I open up the flap, it holds a little stack of photographs. Because this webisode is on embossing, I'm not going to make the entire purse. I'm just going to show you how to make the flap. But so you know, there's a template that has pieces laid out, so all you have to do is download this off the website and print it out, and then you'll cut and score this and assemble the pocket. So I have the flap here, and I want to show you how I made the flap. What's really great is I've used embossing powder to create the rich look of patent leather. So here is my flap, and on the back side I've actually attached a little bit of eclipse tape, which will help protect the back of the card because I'm going to be applying ink over the surface and I don't want the ink to get all over the back. My first step is to take my stamp here, and I'm going to ink up a couple different colors. So I just tap the stamp, and on this one I'm going to apply the ink directly to the stamp, and one more color here, and you can see I get nice coverage of ink, and I press that right down in the center of the flap, and then I take my tray here and I apply some clear embossing powder. Next I'm going to heat my powder. I'm going to melt the powder onto the flap here with my heat tool, and that seals the color onto the card. My next step is to take this black ink, and I'm going to apply the black ink over the whole surface of the card. So I've applied the black ink over the whole surface of the flap here, and I know you think I've ruined this, but wait, I'm going to apply some clear powder over the card here, and we're going to melt that, and you'll see the results. The color magically appears, and now my purse flap looks like patent leather. My next project is to create these classy faux glass tiles using layers of embossing powder. So I start out with a small piece of cardstock, and I have this cube stamp that has 4 images on here. I take my stamp pad and I ink up my stamp and stamp a few images using this orchid color. Next, I work on the second image, stamp a couple more images. I always like to stamp off the edges of the card because it makes it look more finished. And now I'm going to emboss this with clear embossing powder. So I have the clear powder on there, and we're going to use a heat tool here to melt the powder. As you can see, I've got this nice glossy surface on the hearts, and that makes a beautiful card as is, but we're going to continue to add some extra layers now. This is JudiKins Amazing Glaze, which is a really thick embossing powder. So I'm going to put that in the tray and have that ready to go. And the next thing that I want to do is take my little brown ink pad here and I tap the brown ink over the whole surface of my card here. Again, I know you're thinking this will ruin my image, but because you saw the first one, you know the color will pop through. So I tap the ink on, I dredge the card through the powder, and when I heat this, the color will appear. Because embossing powder is a plastic that I'm melting onto the card, while it's still hot, it's a little sticky, and that allows me to put another layer of the powder on. So I'm going to reheat it, and then I dredge it through the powder, and you can see that the powder is sticking to the melted embossing layer. I'm going to continue to apply 2 or 3 layers of this embossing powder to build up that faux glass tile. Once I feel like I've applied as many layers as I want, the next thing is to apply some gold embossing powder with gold ink. I have this great sparkly powder here that I'm going to use, and I have my little heart stamp, and this time I stamp it right over my pink hearts, and I apply the sparkle embossing powder, and I'm going to heat that with my heat tool. This will set the gold powder onto the plastic surface. But I'm not finished yet. I'm going to add one more layer to embed that gold into the plastic here. So I bring the clear back, reheat this so that I make the whole layer a little sticky. And now the gold looks like it's embedded in the glass. Once it's cool enough for me to touch, I could actually cut it with a pair of scissors. Now I can trim it with my scissors without cracking my piece. Once it's cooled off, I can bend it to create the cracks in my little tile here. Now that I'm finished, I'll show you some other projects that I've brought. So here's some of the finished projects that I have. I have the Elegant Love card here with the gold embossing. I have my faux glass tile. I have my little pocket purse. I've used the thick embossing to create a wax seal. And I've used purple ink instead of the brown ink to create the glass tile. And finally, I've used the same patent leather technique to create a little notepad. I hope this inspires you to pick up a heat tool and some embossing powders and add embossing elegance to your cards and projects. I hope to see you soon.
For step-by-step instructions on how to create this week's project, download the design guide featuring special make-it-your-own bonus tips.